We're going to get the meeting started. Everybody's busy today. Is your head hurting? Can y'all hear me? Who'd like to open us with a word of prayer this morning? Chairman Burns.
If you'll join me in a word of prayer. Father, we're grateful for today. We're grateful for the state and the country we live in. Our hearts go out to our brothers in the Ukraine. Help us remember the struggle that they're in for their freedom. Give us your wisdom, your patience, and your guidance as we conduct the business of Georgia. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Representative Jenkins is not here, I don't believe. Do you all know if he's planning on coming or?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we'll just move him to the bottom of the agenda. Hopefully he can get here before we adjourn. So that'll move us to House Bill 1175. Representative Clay Perkle, we had this in a subcommittee chaired by Chairman Anderson. Tell us about the bill, and then we can have questions, and Chairman Anderson can give us the recommendation from the subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
So I would like to go, actually, for those that were on the subcommittee, there is, I think you are working off a substitute that was drafted, and I want to make sure that we're all singing off the same song
Please,
sheet.
yes,
LC 51018-7S.
That's what's in our folder.
Okay, so the change that was made is on the labeling. So after we had had the hearing, and I talked to several, we had several questions and talked to several people afterwards. I did add language to the labeling, which is where I had, there was a good bit of discussion about that. And so I included language on line
138, maybe.
Thank you, 138. This is a raw milk product that is not pasteurized, and the language that was added is and may increase the risk of foodborne illness, and that will be on the label for. The other change that was different from what we had in is the start date, the effective date. I've moved that to January 1, 2023 for the department to make sure that we have adequate time. So every day in the state of Georgia, raw milk is sold in farmers markets. It is consumed by people, and it's done so even though the sale of raw milk for human consumption is illegal presently in the state of Georgia. It's done through a PET label. So it's labeled for pet food. It has, all you have to do is fill out a form with the department, pay a small fee, and you can obtain an animal food label in order to sell raw milk for, and I'll use air quotes, for pet food. It is never tested, the animal is never tested, the milk is never tested for antibiotics or for bacteria. And so what this bill attempts to do is to provide a guardrail for that system that allows the sale of raw milk for human consumption that is tested. So it has the same testing procedures that we have with our grade A milk that is pasteurized. So what this bill does is provides for the department, and I'll walk through it quickly. I'm not going to go through the whole thing line by line. That is much too much. But the guardrails we put on there is it is sold direct to consumers. You can find that on line 33. The commissioner has authority for this and responsibility for enforcing, to inspect, cause to be inspected as often as deemed practical, to prohibit the sale of unwholesome raw milk, to condemn food that is unwholesome, take samples wherever and as often as necessary, Line 68 provides the permitting. Lines 86 on provides for the testing procedures. Labeling we've already covered. Line 147 refers to the sampling criteria. There again, the samples are at any reasonable time and place. It provides, one of the questions that Senator Anderson had was, how often are they tested? It's the same criteria that we have for the other, but it's listed, enumerated in lines 158 on how often they are tested and what the tests are for. On lines 219, on provides for the animal health. 260 on provides for the animal testing. They will be tested, the animals will be tested for brucellosis and tuberculosis every 12 months. And that is basically a quick rundown through the bill. This bill primarily provides for the standards and testing. There again, it's a crack in what we have now. It's not laid open. It has direct to consumer is where the milk could be sold. So you're not going to accidentally purchase it at Publix. It's you actually have to go and search it out. I think I did address the labeling concerns that some had. There are concerns regarding the safety of non-pasteurized milk. But I do want to emphasize there is not a single person that is going to make you purchase or consume raw milk. The guardrails we put in place in this bill, I think, are sufficient to make sure with the labeling requirements, and you actually have to seek it out. It's direct to consumer. You actually have to request to get it and seek it out. So I think the guardrails are in place to make this product a safer product. That is the extent of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions for the author? Number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my representative, glad to have you with us.
I appreciate your vote too, sir.
Yes, sir. I didn't get the substitute before, so if I reference a line and it's different than in the substitute, we'll have to figure out where it's at. But just to start, and I think you already mentioned this for clarification, the intent of what you're trying to do is to provide a procedure and a method to allow producers, which means the person with the dairy operation, to sell direct to consumer from their operation, not via a broker, not via a retail operation like a grocery store. The only place that this would be allowed for sale would be right off the farm, basically. Is that?
Yes, sir. And there would be, so it is direct to consumer. So perhaps a dairy person might have out front of his barn, might have, where they sell other Georgia grown products and would have this for sale there off his farm. So
but it's still tied to the farm. That is correct. I guess is what I was trying to say. I think so. That was the clarifying. I think in that where you in lines 30, I think it's the same 30 through 36.
Yes, sir.
I think that's where it lays that out.
Yes,
right?
sir. It is.
So I know that in the language it says for the purpose of human consumption for wholesale purposes. A grocery store would be considered a retail location. Is there a reason you didn't include the words wholesale or retail purposes? I think the reason I'm asking is I don't think it changes the meaning of what you're trying to do. I just think it clarifies to ensure what the intent of what you are trying to do, where you get the opportunity to sell direct to the consumer.
So your question is on lines 34 and 35?
Yeah, it would be, so it says for the purpose of human consumption for wholesale purposes, or if it is not in compliance with this article. So It's the question is for wholesale purposes or retail purposes if it is not in compliance with this article. So you could still sell it on your farm in a retail manner because
Yes.
it would be in compliance with this article.
That's correct.
But it would clarify, I think, that maybe it's not utilized for other retail purposes. Does that make sense?
I would need to consult with legislative counsel, but I'm not sure that would be,
Yeah,
that would
if you don't
follow the
mind.
legal framework we're looking for.
I understand. I just want to make sure we're,
Guardrails.
yeah, we're getting at what you
Certainly.
want to get at.
Stand by, we're gonna ask Dave to weigh in on that.
Mr. Chair, getting at what the senator is asking about, so that is a prohibition on selling it for wholesale purposes. If you prohibited the farm from selling for retail purposes, at least my reading of the bill, that would mean that they couldn't sell it themselves to the consumer. So this is intended to stop the farm from selling to someone else who will then resale it.
Okay.
Retail purposes.
So you, and I just for clarification, so the statement, if it is not in compliance with this article, would not subvert that provision? I'm just asking.
Yeah, or if it's not in compliance. So the two things you cannot do are sell for wholesale purposes.
That's right.
Or sell milk that isn't in compliance with the article, hasn't been tested properly, doesn't meet all of the standards that are put into this bill. If the milk doesn't come up to that level, you can't sell it.
So further inquiry.
Sure.
So my statement was wholesale purposes or retail purposes if it is not in compliance with this article.
Mr. Chair, I think,
And it may not,
yeah,
we may not need it. It may be.
I think the confusion is that you're tying the two things together, that you're
Okay.
saying whole purposes not in compliance.
So you think this
it's just all
covers-
wholesale purposes,
Okay.
even if the milk, as currently written, even if the milk hits the standards that are required by this in terms of testing
Yeah.
and health and everything, it still can't be sold for wholesale purposes. You can't sell a big vat of it for somebody else to bottle and sell in a grocery store or some other store.
So you think this
And that
covers
this
that?
current language, I
Okay.
believe, covers that. Yes.
I actually have a number of questions.
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Chairman.
ahead.
Thank you.
This was in a subcommittee, so they vetted it
Well, I was not a
pretty
member of
good.
the subcommittee.
But go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just out of curiosity, going to, so that answers that question. Thank you. On lines 97 through 104, when it refers to the freezing point of milk, it utilizes the 2-year process. Is that something that, I was just curious why the 2-year framework in that provision?
That is.
Does that make,
Yeah, that
is
is.
that the current standard?
That is the standard that we
Okay.
have. And for those of you that were not following along, when they're looking at the freezing point of milk, you're wanting to make sure that apparently, if you're selling milk for $8 a quart, that if you add milk to it, that goes a lot. I mean, water to it, it goes a long way. So you want to make sure that milk is not added to it. So this is what this is for. Thank you for the question.
Water's not added to.
Water.
Yeah, and that's the common
Yeah,
standard. The
it is.
2-year framework is the common standard. I just wanted to verify that.
Yes, sir.
In lines 108 through 110, it talks about testing of raw milk and, certain residues that may be found, that it would remove it from the human and animal food chain. Does that mean that it would also remove it from the pet milk standards? Do you know? Is that what that's
There-
referring to? Is that what that's referring to? I'm just curious.
No, there are no, for I
There are
know,
no standards for
standards
pet
for
milk.
that.
Okay.
That's correct.
And it says raw milk for human consumption on line 107.
Yep, but on line 110, it says it removes it from the human and animal food chain. I guess that's,
Well, it needs to be destroyed.
Okay.
It's not fit for anybody.
That's what it's getting at.
That's
Okay,
right.
All right. You already discussed the label. Let's see.
What about the date, Mr. Chairman? Did you see you put the
I
date in
think,
there? Do you think it ought to be a little further out than that?
So
or-
I was actually getting to that, Mr. Chairman. So a couple of things. Number one, do we know how much it may cost us to implement this program at the department? Do you have an idea?
The department has issued just an estimate, but no, we really don't.
So with that question in mind, do you know if we have any appropriated funds in the FY23 budget that would allow us to implement this program effectively at the department?
So the FY23 budget that the Senate just looked at, released yesterday, I have not had a chance to go through.
So I don't believe that there is any additional resources in the 23 budget for this particular program. That said, as you know, our fiscal year runs July 1 to June 30 every year. I know that the effective date, I think in the substitute, is January 1st.
That is correct.
Which would even be before we would have an opportunity to discuss
That is
the amended
correct.
budget.
Mhm.
Would you be willing to look at moving the effective date to a point that would give us an opportunity to look at having an opportunity to discuss the budgeting matters that may be needed to implement this particular article? I mean, I think from the standpoint to ensure that it's implemented in a way that it can be done effectively, I think, and get at what you're trying to do in the legislation, I think it would be wise of us to give the department enough time to be able to provide the rules and regulations, and at the same time to be able to ask for the funding that it would need to implement it, which would not be until next legislative session.
Thank you for the question. I would prefer it not be moved to July 1, but that's to this committee. I know the FY23 budget. I know that y'all have done some remarkable changes to it, but that is not over yet.
That's right.
I'd love to get this bill across the finish line and move that effective date out to January. And perhaps, I think perhaps there might be a little bit more movement on the budget before the governor signs it. I'm not sure. I'm sure y'all did some really good things to it, but I cannot. So that's to the will of this committee. So I don't have a say-so in that one.
Understood.
Thank you, Chairman Harper.
ma'am.
All right, Chairman Anderson.
I want to get back to selling it at the dairy, at the farm, and it might be a question to the legal counsel. Can a dairyman take orders and deliver?
I think it does allow for that, yes.
Okay.
So there's no prohibition about how I will deliver it to the consumer, but it will be sold directly to the consumer.
Right. And
Yes,
it
sir.
also can be set up at like a farmer's market also too.
Yes, sir.
All right, Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. I see that you have provided a substitute on the label.
Well, because of your question,
Yes.
I did change the label somewhat, or partially because of your question.
Well, thank you, Representative Perkle. I appreciate that. However, I do want to note that the label that you've updated, even though it's better, it's still less of a warning than what's already on Pet's Milk. So the Pet's Milk label, as required by the Georgia Department of Ag currently, it says the word warning explicitly. And then it has, in bold, not been pasteurized and may contain harmful bacteria. I strongly recommend that we use that same warning, except obviously we're not going to say that it's not for human consumption. But, I mean, if we have a warning with the word warning on Pet's Milk, then it seems to me that it would be very reasonable to put the word warning on human milk, since humans are going to be consuming it?
Well, thank you for the question, and I respectfully disagree with that particular sentiment, mainly because I think you should have a really strong warning on pet's milk. This is not supposed to be used for human consumption. It has never been tested. And so I think if you're looking at degrees of risk, I think you should have a stronger warning on that has not been tested rather than this that has gone through pretty stringent testing. So, and I'm sorry that the label that I added did not meet your approval, but I did try, and so I did want to make the label accurately reflect what we have in this product, and I feel like that we did. There again, I think the risk profile for pet milk might be a little bit higher and should have a stronger label.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that. I think I understand your sentiment, and again, I thank you for strengthening the label in general.
Yes, ma'am.
However, yes, there is testing that's going to be required for this, but we're not requiring that every bottle be tested. And the way that these foodborne illness disease bacteria exist is that it's possible that one day your cow, I'm going to talk about cows because I know people know cows, one day your cow could be perfectly fine and produce grade A milk that's great, and it got tested that day. But on the days that come afterwards, in between the testing, that milk could be bad.
That's true.
And so the same risk that you have with pet's milk, therefore, exists for those bottles that are in between. That same exact risk, because that milk has not been tested again. So once again, I reiterate, I think that a warning, and the word warning, needs to be added to this label. And I say that as somebody who drinks raw milk. That people need to be fairly warned. I'm not against this industry. I'm not against the concept, but I want to make sure that humans are fairly warned that this could be dangerous and could have harmful bacteria, just like we warn on our pet's milk.
All right, thank you, Senator. I have a couple questions, and then we're going to get the subcommittee report. Excuse me, is that me? Chairman Blackman, he might want to weigh in on this, I don't know. I apologize. Turn that off. All right, let me find somewhere in here I saw where it said it would be illegal without a permit, it would be illegal to store raw milk. I just want to be sure, not being that as familiar with a lot of you all on how traditional dairies operate. Does a traditional dairy store raw milk before it's picked up by the?
Yes, sir, it is. I would until it's picked up for. I would prefer that someone who has.
It has to be picked up no more. It can be 2 days. They can store it up to 2 days, but it's got to be picked up within 2 days.
Let me draw your
yes.
attention to line 69 through 71. I just want to be sure we don't have some sort of inadvertent, unintended consequence. 69 through 71. And the attorney may want to weigh in on this too. It shall be unlawful for any person who does not possess a permit from the department, and maybe all dairies have a permit, so maybe that's covered.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be sure it didn't have to be like a raw milk permit.
So I'm looking at leg counsel on this, but
You follow what I'm saying?
yes, sir.
What number, 5?
Yes, please.
All right.
I think it's a legitimate thing to bring up. I don't think here it'll be a problem, only because we have specifically defined raw milk for human consumption, so intended for human consumption as raw milk, as opposed to the kind of milk you're talking about on a traditional dairy is going to be pasteurized milk for human consumption, so it's going to fall under those other regulations. I don't think that this is going to capture any traditional dairies who are storing their milk, which is, yes, raw in that moment, but intended to be pasteurized and then, sold off to be pasteurized milk. Yeah, so the definition specifically of raw milk for human consumption, which we've defined here, that'll be line 23 through 25. Or I'm sorry, 26 through 29 would be fluid whole milk in its natural state from healthy cows or other hoofed animals, which is intended for human consumption, been produced under such rules and regulations as may be prescribed or pursuant to this article. So that is specifically raw milk that is intended for human consumption under this article, which is the raw milk article, not the other article, which is the pasteurized milk article. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you. One more question, and then, like I said, we're going to do the subcommittee report. The permit, the price of the permit or the cost of the permit is left to the discretion of the commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Senator Jackson, you want to have a follow-up on this issue, and then we'll go to the subcommittee report. And we got another bill that's probably going to take a little while, so let's.
Yeah, so just, this is still for Dave, I think. So going back to line 69, it shall be unlawful for any person who does not possess a permit from the department to manufacture, have in storage, sell or offer to sell, right, or offer to give away any raw milk for human consumption. Have in storage. So as an independent person who has goats, would this mean that unless I have a permit, it's unlawful for me to store my own goat's milk without a permit, even if I'm not going to do any of the other things?
So I think one way to look at it is to take the last bit of that sentence, raw milk for human consumption, and insert the definition of raw milk for human consumption, which was on lines 25. And so read it this way: it's unlawful for anyone to have in storage or any milk that has been produced under this article, under these terms, under the conditions of this article, because that's part of the definition, right? Milk that's been produced under this article. So if you are producing milk, with all these, with the intent to sell this as raw milk directly to the consumer, et cetera, then yes, you can't store it on your farm unless you have a permit.
Or give it away.
Or give it away.
I can't give it, I understand. But if I am not intending to sell it, I'm just a regular old homesteader, I'm fine. I can have my raw milk in my refrigerator that I store for however long I determine is safe. Is that correct?
I believe so.
I don't feel very confident about that. So I want to know if I'm just just a personal.
Well, I have a milk cow.
I have one, so I have one goat milker, and I do that, and I want to make sure I can just milk for my family, put it in the refrigerator, have it stored for 2 days. Can I do that without a permit?
I believe so. Yes.
But I cannot give it to my friend here without a permit.
That, correct. That would, I believe, be prohibited based on offer to give away any raw milk.
If y'all feel good about that.
All right, thank you. Chairman Anderson.
We need your friend over?
All right, Chairman Anderson, tell us what the will of the subcommittee is and any background you want to give us.
In the subcommittee, we went over the whole bill, and we had testimony on people for and against. And then also, the subcommittee voted to do pass. But the main thing here, I believe, is that we are dealing with grade A milk. That's the purest, the cleanest milk we have. So when it only pertains to grade A milk, I'm fine with it. And it's an opportunity that our small dairymen possibly can survive and still have a livelihood and keep the farm in existence. So the subcommittee,
Who was on it and what was the vote?
the vote was 2 it was 3 on the, I didn't vote, but I was in favor of it. So it was unanimous.
And who
Everybody-
served on the subcommittee?
Everybody's served on it that, passed it, Senator Jackson and Senator Summers and myself.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to take that as a motion, do pass from the subcommittee. Do I have a second? I have a motion, do pass from the subcommittee. Do we have a second? Second. I have a second from Senator Summers. Further discussion? I do. All right, Russ raised his hand first. Senator Goodman.
Someone may know the answer to this, but I kind of have a problem with if the bill is the way you have interpreted it, that if Senator Jackson's got a milk cow and I'm her neighbor and she wants to give me a gallon of milk, that we make that illegal. And this I'd like to see a fix to that. Would you be amenable to something like that? Yes.
I think Dave, he did not sound very strong in his legal opinion. So if you just looked on the words on paper, he says, I think we're okay, but the tone and the tenor of voice just did not inspire a tremendous amount of confidence there. So not to mean to throw you under the bus, Dave, but he has some language, I think, that he wanted to offer.
I'm not offering any language, to be clear.
Just make a suggestion to Senator
perhaps
Goodman.
address the concerns of what I'm hearing from the committee. What I might suggest is on line 70, striking the language "or offered to give away," to allow you to give your neighbor, a gallon of milk if you've got it. So it'd be to have in storage, sell, or offer to sell therein any raw milk. And then to address a sort of second concern that I was kind of hearing is having a second sentence there that says something along the lines of, nothing in this article shall prohibit, personal use of one's own dairy cow, et cetera. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of this sort of off the cuff, but nothing in here shall prohibit somebody from using personal use of their own raw milk. Is that?
So I'm not comfortable doing this on the fly, be honest with you. I think this is a difficult issue that involves public health. I want to be sure we craft the language right, and that
Agreed.
I don't want to just open it up. I mean, we've got all these restrictions that you've worked so hard on to make it as safe as we think we can and still allow it. We've got a permitting process. I don't want to circumvent that with some poorly crafted language that allows people to give it away. I don't think it's reasonable to expect you're going to have an enforcement issue if you're just consuming it at your house with your family, and even if you give a little bit to your friends. But I don't want to put that in code and circumvent the whole permit process that you've worked so hard to develop. We can either table the bill and come back and try to get it worked out, or we can vote on it and try to amend it on the floor. But we're not gonna do this right now on the fly and make a mistake. So I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move my motion table to get right.
All right, a motion to table takes precedence. Got a motion to table.
A second.
Got a second. All in favor of tabling the bill and continuing to work with the author to try to, we're going to meet again Monday. Representative Perkle, I'm sorry, man, but I know you put a ton of work into this.
We'll get it right.
And I appreciate that, and I think we're close, but all those in favor of tabling the bill, raise your hand. All right. Any opposed? All right, we'll work with you
Thank you.
and get it on the agenda for Monday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I don't think it's too much.
All right, so next, Representative Gaines. This is a good bill, Representative Gaines, but it's also a pretty big
I'm not
shift.
sure I want to be up here right now.
All right.
I know. I mean, I thought, no lawyers. I thought we were in good
Did
shape.
we not
but
do the nomination? Did I skip that?
You should have brought us a glass of milk.
we'll try to bring you some food trucks. How about that?
All right, Representative Gaines is bringing us House Bill 1443. And if you would, give us your LC number. Is anybody in here behind us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1443, the LC number is 540075S, and I'm joined by Tony Harrison, who's the president of the Food Truck Association of Georgia, because he is certainly the expert on the ground and can help answer questions. But I'll kind of walk through an overview of the bill, and then any comments from Tony, and then we can walk through the specifics and then welcome any questions. But this is actually an issue we've been working on. Tony, we first met 3 years ago before COVID to discuss an issue that our food truck operators face in this state. Frankly, they face too much red tape and too many fees that are being imposed on our food truck operators. And so they're spending more time with the government and less time with their customers. So one of the challenges that they face is in every county they operate in, they're having to get the same exact health inspection permit. And again, it's the exact same process they're following in every county. Many food trucks operate in 10, 15, 20 counties across the state. They may operate in the metro area and then come over to Athens in my area for a period of time, and then may travel to Savannah and throughout the state. And they're having to, one, get the health inspection permit, but two, also pay the fees on all of those health inspection permits. Again, it's the exact same in every county. And so what we're trying to do is try to save our food truck operators some unnecessary red tape and some costs that they're having to incur on these permitting fees. We have worked to develop the legislations before you. It's a substitute that we've worked with the Department of Public Health, the Georgia Restaurant Association, ACCG, and others, and have found language that I think everybody is on board with. We had a unanimous vote in the House. But what it does is if you are permitted in your home county of operation, that permit would be one you could take throughout the state. You do have to notify the county of where you're going to be operating in, let them know where you're going to be, when you're going to be there. They can still do surprise inspections, and they can charge for those inspections, but it can only be the amount of cost that they actually incur to have that inspection. So They would still be able to recoup those costs. Your home-based permit, though, would be one you can take throughout the state. Again, it's the exact same permit in every county currently, and this just allows you to take that permit throughout the state. So I think it's a good bill that's going to help small businesses across our state, and proud of the legislation we've come together on. And Tony, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add, but that's the general idea behind the legislation.
No, thank you. I think you did an excellent job. You know, I'm a food truck owner and a restaurant owner, so I, you know, kind of see it from both angles. And, you know, we are, you know, in a difficult position from a permitting standpoint. Again, if you're in the food truck business full-time in Georgia today, to be successful, you do need to operate in 10 or 15 different counties. And to have the redundant permitting process doing the same thing over and over in each county, it's just an undue burden on our community.
Thank you. I was able to meet with Representative Gaines and Mr. West yesterday, and I just want to make sure the committee and the public understands each food truck would be individually inspected and individually permitted, correct?
That's correct.
And the local health department in the county they're operating in still has the option to inspect them on a kind of surprise basis.
Anytime,
Sure.
that's right. Unexpected visits.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could add, they also have visibility via a database to see that,
Yeah,
that truck.
that was interesting. So speak to that a little bit in more detail.
Yeah, so in the...
Representative, please come to order.
In the county where your base of operation is, you're going to receive a permit and an inspection. That goes into a database, so then if you go into a new county, they have visibility, the health department has visibility into that database to see that, in fact, yes, you are permitted food truck and that you've been inspected on X date and that you're in good standing. And then at that point, they can choose to come out and do an arbitrary surprise inspection if they want to, but at least they know, hey, this food truck has been permitted, inspected, and is operating in good standing.
Thank you. And this legislation does not preempt local ordinances.
That's correct.
All right. Yes, sir.
Just got one, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Some counties I go to, I see food trucks come out. The food trucks are nice and clean and shiny and all that good stuff. And you know where I'm going with this, right?
I do.
And then some of them look like, you know, a 1965 Chevrolet that was drug out of the back field with a food truck sitting on the back of her. You know, I mean,
Are you talking about mine?
Thank you. So how do you, is the permit just for the food part in the back? I'm assuming all on. It doesn't matter what they put it on. Is that correct?
When you say it doesn't matter,
The food storage, food dispensary part of the vehicle. I mean, what I'm getting at is, so when they permit these trucks or whatever, the front looks like rough, but the food, it kind of gives you the impression. I didn't know if you all had standards for that right there.
They're not inspecting the vehicle itself, is I think what he's
Is
the health
asking.
department, no, is not, in
Okay,
terms of the
making sure.
mechanical,
Yeah.
no. And in some cases, what you see as a terrible looking truck is by design in some cases. You know, go figure, but
Okay.
it's
That's all right, Mr. Chairman.
the reality of the business.
All right.
Thank you.
Senator Burns?
Just a point of clarification. So the food truck is permitted in its home county, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the database provides visibility to an alternative county that it has license to operate, is permitted to operate. But the county B can also provide a surprise inspection, is that true?
No, they would be able to.
They would be able to.
Yes.
So county A provides the permit, the inspection of the permit. If I travel to county B and that county chooses to,
That's
they
right.
can do a surprise inspection.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. And the Georgia Restaurant Association, I see Karen is here. You're okay with this?
We've been in discussions and we support the changes that were necessary.
Thank you. And I think you all told me GMA and Association of County Commissioners of Georgia were okay with this?
We never heard, we didn't, ACCG was who we worked with, and we incorporated their changes into the legislation.
And DPH.
And DPH.
Okay. Senator Jackson, you got a motion or you got a question?
One question and a motion. I'm happy to make a
Okay.
motion. I just want to make sure the standards for getting a permit in county by county are exactly the same. There's no difference. Like if I got a permit in DeKalb and then I got one in Fulton County, the standards are contiguously the same. Is that correct?
I don't want to speak for DPH, but I think the short answer is yes.
Okay.
The fee amount, it does differ by county, but as I understand it, and
The
DPH is
standards.
here.
Yeah, the DPH did a great job of kind of standardizing that and then training their folks, the county health departments, to kind of the expectation.
So yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. if
All
this
right,
is time.
I'll hear your motion.
I make a motion do pass.
Got a motion to pass, a second from Senator Summers. Yes, sir.
If I can choose the county, how do I choose my home county? Is that my residence or my place of business address?
So you choose your county based on where you have a commissary, and that's a whole nother issue right now. But yes, your home
Okay,
base
so
is.
you have a designated physical location where you would then get your initial permit.
That's
so
correct.
I wouldn't necessarily shop counties to find the lowest permitted county.
No, and part of the way that and working with DPH is it is in regulation right now. You have to return every 24 hours. This puts it in the law, so you would have to stay in your home county.
Thank you.
All right, I got a motion and a second. Do pass. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, please. Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Representative Gaines, good luck in rules.
Thank you.
Who's going to be
Thank
your
you.
Senate sponsor?
Senator Albers.
Senator Albers, okay. Good deal, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I skipped something on the agenda. I'm going to go back to it, be sure we get this done. Part of our responsibility in the Senate Agriculture Committee is to make appointments to various commissions. It's time for us to appoint the Senate member to the Agriculture Commodity Commission. I'm going to make a nomination that we reappoint Mr. Russ Moon. Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This is a questionable appointment.
One of you all tell us something real quick about him.
I can. Russ is a very involved and active in the agricultural industry across our state, and has a phenomenal operation over in Madison, and is just a all-around great individual and someone we would be proud to have put on the Commodity Commission, Mr. Chairman. Even though there are some things we could probably ask him some questions about if he was here in person, I'm sure.
Were you in school with him? Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank y'all. All in favor of reappointing Mr. Moon, raise your hand. All right. That passed unanimously. Good deal. Thank you. Now we're going to hear from Representative LaRicchia. He's going to present Representative Jenkins' ungraded lumber bill, House Bill 1384, and we got a late arriving committee sub too on that. So the LC number on your Senate research summary is not going to match the bill itself. I think it's just a date change though, but go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. And Mr. Chairman, I apologize for my little interruption, but I was kind of at the last minute trying to help Representative Jenkins with this bill and get it presented. He's been held up. But I talked to you briefly about this bill in rural caucus.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't get much simpler than this. Just a 5-6 line bill that allows people that have these small sawmills and around rural Georgia, old farmers and different guys have these small sawmills where they'll saw their own lumber, 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x10s, everything that you would buy at Lowe's, but it is not officially graded lumber. it will allow them to saw and use that ungraded lumber on uninhabited structures, whether that property is zoned residential or agriculture, as long as nobody's living in it. A barn, a doghouse, a hog shelter, just anything you can think of. It saves them a little bit of money to cut their own wood and use it on those buildings. So that's what the bill does. The Code Revisions Board is under the Department of Community Affairs, I believe, and they would have to come in and change the minimum standards and the provisions to put that into the Georgia Building Code. Now, I'm not sure what date was changed, but what was the change?
Oh, Lord.
That's okay. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, it's, the changes are just on lines 11 and 12, and it's as a result of the fact that not every county in the state has a zoning ordinance, and so not every county could, those few counties that don't have a zoning ordinance would not have been able to take advantage of this, because originally the bill said property zoned for residential agriculture use. Now it says on properties zoned or primarily used for residential or agricultural purposes. So it captures both of those. And then the other small change is, rather than saying uninhabited structure, it now says any accessory structure not containing habitable space.
Yeah.
Just to.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
That's right.
So this is LC 510189S, and it's a separate, just a separate one piece of paper. House Bill 1384. Like I said, it didn't arrive until this morning. All right, I'll give you just a second to read it, okay?
Those
And
changes
while-
sound good,
just
Mr.
to buy a
Chairman.
little time, I'll ask you some questions.
Yes, sir.
So, if this does in no way override any kind of ordinances or zoning at the local level, so if it doesn't allow me to build a uninhabitable structure too close to the neighbor's property line,
That's right.
for example.
No, sir,
or-
it doesn't circumvent any of that. Matter of fact, it probably just allows these local governments to know that this is what the state law. Still, the local governments have some flexibility in what they would consider to be a structure that could pose some public, like a picnic shelter. It may not be occupied, but they may say, hey, if it's a picnic shelter and people are going to be under there, this is mostly just allowing people to know that this is for uninhabited structures on someone's private property that they want to build a shelter or a dog. There would still be lots of opportunities for local governments to put into place ordinances that says, hey, that's going to be a community shelter, so we want graded lumber on that or whatever.
Is it not true that we adopt the international building standard in our building codes, and because this is not addressed in the international building standard, it's causing some communities to, if they're going strictly by the book.
That's right.
Or maybe they contract out their building inspection, and that person is just going strictly by the international building code, they may disallow something like this.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. That's exactly where this bill comes from. Representative Jenkins has a beautiful farm down here that he cut his own wood and sawed it up and built a barn, and that county contracted with someone to do their code enforcement. And as you can imagine, if you're contracting for a municipality, you're going to follow it by the letter. Even though common sense and other opinions may differ, they're following it right by the letter, and they say that's not graded lumber, you can't use it. And so that's where this piece of legislation came from.
Okay, thank you. Senator Jackson, you have a question?
I do, thank you. So is it difficult to get your lumber graded? Is it costly? What's the obstacle here? Why aren't people getting their lumber graded?
Well, again, you got to remember how ordinarily the way that lumber comes to the person building a structure is through Home Depot or Lowe's, and so all of their lumber that comes through, because they're selling it from the wholesale to retail out to the consumer, they just assume every piece of lumber is going to go into residential or inhabited structures. And then you can use it for anything you want to after that. They don't have to worry about, well, we've got all this lumber that's going to go in barns and all this. So what private, particularly farmers, I keep saying some of our folks in agriculture, they'll saw up their own wood, and they make anywhere from barns to park tractors under to dog houses. And so
I understand.
the process of grading the lumber is through the companies that process the wood and go ahead and get it graded, and just assume that all of that's going to be used for houses.
So my question is there no way for, if I saw my own lumber on my own property, there's no current way for me to get that lumber graded?
Not to my knowledge, because that grading would have to be part of a process where you were going to do it kind of like the raw milk a while ago, if you were going to sell it, or if you were going to, yeah. And so that's right. There's not really a process which you could pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, come grade all this lumber for me before I build my barn or house.
And one final question.
Not house.
No.
Barn.
No, if they wanted to use it for a house, they would have to have somebody come grade it.
Right.
But if
Okay.
they're using it for barns, no grade.
All right.
I have one final question. Is there anything in this law that prohibits me from selling my ungraded lumber to somebody else who wants to build a barn on their property?
No.
So I can sell it without a permit, without it being graded. You following me here,
Yeah.
Mr. Mill people? You say I can sell it. I can give it to my neighbor without it being graded, without having permit, and let them use ungraded lumber to build a workshop that has no inhabitable space, but we all know we all spend 8 hours a day in that workshop in an ungraded lumber. Is that correct?
Well, most of that's just parked stuff idle, and you're not consuming it.
All right, Senator Goodman.
I would just make this comment. We at our farm, we all, every hurricane that comes through, we've got a fellow that comes with a wood miter sawmill, and he saws our trees up, and we use it to build all kinds of stuff. But I would just tell you this, from somebody who has spent their lifetime in the wood business and farming, I would take ungraded Georgia yellow pine over all that graded Canadian spruce any day of the week. So I'll just make that comment today.
All right, thank you. That sounded like a campaign video. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you bringing that. I think it's a needed bill at appropriate time. I make a motion to pass.
It's appropriate time.
I make a motion to pass.
We got a motion from Senator Summers, second Senator Anderson. Any further discussion? Hear none. All those in favor, raise their hand. Any opposed, like sign. Got one opposed. It passed. Good luck
Thank you,
to
Mr. Chairman.
your
Thank you
friend
so
and
much.
rules.
Can we get, would you
Yeah,
carry
who's
it forward?
carrying it? Senator Summers.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know. That's good.
All right, Senator Anderson will
My bad.
carry it. All right, any other business to come before the committee today? If you all that have keen interest in the raw milk would get with Representative Perkle, I would sure appreciate it. I think we owe him a vote on that bill. All right. Thank you very much. We stand adjourned.